Hello, everybody. This video is about writing personal narrative essays, and it's called Tell Your Story. In many ways, our lives are made up of stories. How we understand our lives, how we make decisions, and how we interact with other people are all heavily influenced by the stories we tell ourselves. The story of our lives, the story of our place in human history, the family stories we repeat at holidays, the fairy tales, movies, and other forms of fictional stories that we consume on a regular basis, even the evocative, if often incoherent, stories of our dreams. These narrative frameworks interact in ways that influence how we make sense of things that happen to us and the way we connect our past to the future. Sometimes these stories are very easy to identify and to talk about, but often we play out a role in narratives without even knowing the plot or the author. The more completely we can understand the stories that make up the texture of our lives, the more self-awareness we can cultivate, and the more mastery we can exert over the stories we choose to live within. In the previous lecture, we talked about how writing about a text gives the brain an opportunity to think through the complexities and implications of something that we read. But the same ability of writing to focus the mind, analyze information, and unlock new ways of thinking can also help us understand the texts of our lives more richly. As complex as written texts can be, there is nothing more dense, more overwhelming, and more freighted with mystery than the texture of our own lives. The crush of daily experience, the vast archive of memory, the ambiguous questions about our own motivations and affinities. Our lives are full of things that merit thinking about, but most of the time we're too busy living our lives to have time to think about them. It's disturbingly easy in human life to get into a pattern of just going with the flow of everyday routines in a way that prevents us from taking the time to step back and look at who we are and what we do. The Greek philosopher Socrates famously said that the unexamined life is not worth living. This may sound a little harsh, but what he means was just that it's important to think about who you are, the story or stories that you're living in, and to use these reflections to consider whether there are things you can do to revise your story, flip the script, and take control of the narratives you tell yourself about who you are. As a writer, moreover, in an academic or professional environment, your life is your most important source of information about the world. Of course, there's a lot you can learn from reading and researching, but the most important insights you will ever have, the most impactful observations, theories, and ideas, grow out of the soil of your own being. Your stories, your life, your relationships, your hopes and dreams, your quirks and talents, these constitute your first and most important research database. Whenever you are trying to learn about anything, even something you have no personal experience with, your own perspective is a crucial starting point, the foundation upon which any other information will have to be built. For this reason, understanding our own lives is the most important first step to conducting any other kind of inquiry, which is why the foundational tenet of the Greek philosophical tradition that inspired Socrates is the oracular advice, know thyself. Our lives and our identities are so complex that it is unlikely that anyone who has ever lived or who could ever live will ever achieve perfect self-knowledge. But the power of writing can help us at least to know ourselves a little better when we use it to unpack and interpret the stories that make up our lives. In addition to helping us understand our own stories better, writing out the stories of our lives helps us to share those stories with other people in a way that enables us not only to know ourselves, but also to gain greater empathy and understanding of one another. When you tell me what you think, I may disagree or agree, but when you tell me what you've been through, you engage my attention on a whole other level. I see the world from your point of view, while also strangely merging my point of view with yours, so that your story twines around the stories of my life, becoming in a way one of them. When we share our stories with other people, we break down barriers of difference and distance that act to keep people alienated from one another, opening up a shared space where the common experiences of being human all intermingle. For all these reasons, telling a story from your life is a wonderful way to use language to do its miraculous work of stimulating both personal reflection and interpersonal empathy. To get the most mileage out of your personal narrative essay, consider the following strategies. Start with a moment in time. Your life is a huge topic. Indeed, it is the biggest topic that it is possible to conceive, since it encompasses literally everything you will ever know. Although it might be an interesting writing exercise to try to tell the whole story of your life in a 500-word essay, it is likely that such an attempt, in trying to say everything all at once, would resort to generalizations that might be true of anyone's life. One of the beautiful things about life, however, is that there is a sense in which parts contain the whole. What you thought about while you were brushing your teeth this morning can provide just as much insight into who you are as a person as a resume of your accomplishments. The best personal narrative writers focus on some particular thing that happened, even something apparently insignificant or routine, and use the story of that incident to provide an illustration of who they are and how they experience the world they live in. In general, the more specific the incident is, the better. Try to identify a specific moment in time. Use your writing to describe it in as much detail as you can. Once you have set the scene, use the rest of your story to explain why this moment matters, what it means to you, how you feel in the moment, what you hear, smell, and taste. Write in your own voice. This is your story. It's told from your perspective. It's full of people and places that you know and moments that you care about. This means that writing a personal narrative essay provides a unique opportunity for you to write in the style of self-expression that seems most natural to you. This may mean that you want to write the story in the same voice that you use for talking to your family and friends. And if that's what feels right to you, developing this voice in your writing can bring energy and authenticity to your story. At the same time, many writers discover that they develop a writing voice that is distinct from their speaking voice, even if how they write borrows elements from how they talk. The personal narrative essay allows you to work out your own way of expressing yourself. Indeed, in many personal narrative essays, the voice and personality of the storyteller are just as or even more important than whatever actually happens in the story. Challenge yourself to transcend cliches. A cliché is a kind of pre-packaged representation of something that has been used so often that people know all about it before they hear it. Sometimes clichés are common stereotypes of people: the saintly grandmother, the evil stepmother, the mean girl, the inspiring teacher. Sometimes they are hackneyed turns of phrase. It seemed like forever. I thought I was going to die. I was swept off my feet. Sometimes they are trite sentiments. Love is blind. Opposites attract. Don't judge a book by its cover. Clichés can be useful, and sometimes even true, but often they can also stand in as a substitute for actual thinking. Once we see something as a cliché, it can be hard to see the actual thing itself. One of the great things about writing is that it can help us identify clichés where they crop up in the stories we tell ourselves, which happens to be with alarming frequency, and then to write into them, to take them apart and find the counterexamples that disrupt the cliché and return the thing we're writing about to its original complexity. The inspiring writing teacher shows evidence of actually being a conceited jerk. The mean girl stops texting to help a blind woman cross the road. The worst thing that ever happens to you turns out to have been a blessing in disguise. As you write, try to describe people, places, and events as honestly as you can. When you notice something that might be a cliché, write into it to move past the cliché and closer toward the thing itself. Find the moral in your story. Not all stories have to have a moral, but since we are writing narrative essays rather than short stories, identifying a meaning in your story can help you to frame your story as an illustration of a particular human truth. What can your story teach us about success, failure, love, faith, dreams, grief, curiosity, friendship, family, culture, struggle, education, or any other human value? In a personal narrative essay, the moral of your story will serve as the thesis for your essay, and the story itself provides the supporting evidence that you'll use to persuade the reader that your thesis is true. At the same time, I would encourage you to start by writing out your story first, and then try to derive the moral, rather than by starting out with a moral and then trying to find a story that fits it. Morals are also prone to becoming cliches. You can achieve anything with hard work, or the human spirit is strong enough to overcome anything. Again, sometimes cliches are true, and it is also the case that a powerful story can transform a cliche into a living truth. But the most meaningful personal writing starts from experience and then tries to divine the moral from the story, rather than imposing a moral on a story before you've even had a chance to tell it.